एकम् अक्षरम् हृदि निरन्तरम् भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् अहम् साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता वा पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तभावशुक्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो वरधिय दृष्टात्मनिष्टात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। Namo Ramana. In this, the Thursday Satsang from Ramanacentre Center for Learning, it has been our practice to select two verses from the work Guruvachaka Kovai. The work is by Muruganar Swamigal. The verse selection is done randomly by Revatima. Each verse is read and each verse reading is followed by a short meditation on its meaning, and that is followed by the practice of self-enquiry for about 15 minutes. After these two segments of verse reading, meditation on its meaning, and the practice of Atma Vichara are completed, there will be summing up remarks by Shri Venkatesh Deshpande ji. That shall be followed by the chanting of Sri Ramana Ashtotram, where the chanting will be online by Vaibhavji and Pratnama, and the rest of us can look to who is the listener. because only after the listener arises do the chanter, the chanting, and all arise, and we are able to perceive. So go to the a priori existence of the true listener. Who is the true listener? Who alone is will be the practice during the listening of Ashtotram, and that will bring the satsang to a conclusion. We begin with the first verse selected for us. It is verse number 1029. Verse number 1029. That which is termed happiness is only the Atma Swarupa. That which is termed happiness is only the Atma Swarupa. Perfectly full happiness is the self, and the self does not exist even slightly apart from the perfectly full happiness. That which truly exists is only the happiness of the self. Therefore, firmly realize this truth and abide unswervingly in the state of the self, unceasingly enjoying that which is happiness of the self. That which is termed happiness is only the Atma Swarupa, the self. Perfectly full happiness is the self, and the self does not exist even slightly apart from the perfectly full happiness. That which truly exists, the Ulla Porul, that which truly exists is only the happiness of the self. Therefore, firmly realize this truth and abide unswervingly in the state of the self, unceasingly enjoying that happiness of the self. So, first of all, we are drawn to the introduction to the work Who Am I, where Bhagavan clarifies that each living being is only seeking to be happy always. Like we may feel that we are interested in the serving the others. Let us say the next best highest is that serving the others. You see a lot of poverty, lot of hunger, and somebody sends you a video on that, and you immediately feel that that is something you can commit your life to. And you see in Ramanashram also there is Annadana going on. But is that the real problem? Now, unless we meditate on the real problem, we are not going to get at real happiness. Therefore, the poverty, if somebody brings the food, that seems to be over. But then, are the rich countries, let's say, where the poverty is almost non existent, are they really happy, which we are seeking? Then we understand we may contribute to the Annadanam in ashram or make our own the Annadanam and removal of poverty. But we should not misconstrue that we are addressing the root or real problem of living. The real problem, as addressed by the great ones, is the unreal self, that the ego that divides the self as self and non-self. In the self, in the reality of the self, Atma Swarupa, there is no Anatma, there is no non-self. The self is not divided as subject and object. So the root or the real problem, unless you find the real problem and address it, you are merely peripherally engaged. Some problem you may be dealing with, insurance not made, insurance done. Some health issue not addressed. But after the health issue is over, then what? Are we really happy? So the root of all problems, as identified by Bhagavan, is the ego that divides the self, the Atma Swarupa, the real, undivided, unblemished, unmixed happiness, unalloyed happiness, it divides. The ego divides as subject and object. Therefore, when one goes into the inquiry into the ego and finds that it really does not exist, that really the root misery of all the miseries, only the division of consciousness as subject and object is at the root of all problems. Poverty is there, it is a manifestation of this root problem. Country and country are fighting, country is divided. All these are manifestations. Are they real problems? The question we have to ask is that the root problem of all living? The root problem is even more further down, that the moment a living being forms the ego as separateness in the root self, as self and non self, there is the root cause of all misery. That is the real problem. And when you inquire into that, that root problem also vanishes. Along with it, all misery vanish. And one is in the Akanda Ananda of Atmaswarupa, the self. And one understands that to be the self is the real happiness. It is, first of all, the reality. The reality is undivided as subject and object. Therefore, this itself is the Akanda Ananda, or the real happiness which all living beings are searching. So the solution is not for one person worried about when he is going to die or what is going to happen to him, but it is on behalf of all living and non living beings. Because once you come to the self, there is not even the division as living and non living beings. So you set out to find the solution on behalf of all living beings, but then you find the solution which includes living and non living beings, because this division is also not present in the Akanda Ananda of the Atma Swarupa. So that is where uh, the great gift of Bhagwan, that you stay addressing the root problem so that your solution also will be real. If you address unreal problems, you will get unreal solutions only, with which real happiness will not be there. So address the root problem, which itself is unreal, and the real self will manifest or will reveal itself. And that is where we are headed in Atma Vichara for the next 15 minutes. We will request Ujjwal ji to set the time for us.
Yeah, we'll do it, Nandakumar. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We continue by taking up the second verse selected for us. Verse number 1198. Verse number 1198. Only those who have not listened attentively with their wandering minds at rest to the transcendental speech, Paravak, the language of grace spoken by their Lord, will say that a flute is sweet, a yard is sweet, and the tender prattle of their children is also extremely sweet. Only those who have not listened attentively with their wandering minds at rest to the transcendental speech, Paravak, the language of grace spoken by their Lord, will say that a flute is sweet, a yard is sweet, and the tender prattle of their children is also extremely sweet. This is from a Tamil saying in Tirukural, where குழலினிது யாழினிது என்பர் தம் மக்கள் சொல் கேளாதார், மழலை சொல் கேளாதார், or something like that. That only those who have not listened to that sweet meaningless prattle or lisps of the children. And what kind of children? Our own children. Only they will say that those instruments of music, the flute and the yard. Yard is another type of music instrument, which is a string instrument, I think. Flute, of course, is the wind instrument. Only those who have not listened to the sweet prattle of their young ones, the children, will say these instruments are. So the humanity, the human voice, that too the innocent voice from the innocent minds of the young ones, sounds very sweet. But then even that is not sweet when one learns the art of quietening the mind. That's why listening to a speech is closer to the possibility of being abiding to the self than to the speaker, because the speaker uses the coarse instruments of speaking, whereas the listener is using only the jnanendriyam. That's why while listening to Ashtotram, the rest of us, we try to hold who is the listener. When the art of listening is refined, we are first able to listen to our own thoughts. When our listening is coarse, we are so eager to see what the others are speaking, what others are saying, so much importance and so many finding faults with what others are saying is there. But then slowly we understand it's not important at all as to what others are saying, but what our mind is saying, what our mind is speaking in one sense. And when we listen to the mind or observe the mind becomes quieter and quieter. That the whole mind is only I, is only the I thought that has expanded as many other thoughts. So with Atma Vicharam, when the ego becomes quieter and quieter as a listener and is not distracted by the senses or by the mind, then it starts listening to the Paravak. The Paravak is this Purana. Yesterday, when Venkatesh was reading from letters from Sri Ramanashram, he was reading that The Paravak is called Kundalini Shakti by the yogis. The Paravak is called as Akhanda Akara Vritti by the Bhaktas. And the Paravak is called as Aham Spurana by the Atmavicharis. So listening to the Aham Spurana is possible only when the ego is bereft of the vasanas related to the senses and the vasanas related to other thoughts. In that quiet ego, the Paramatma, Hariyaditara Jivara Ahavarisa Guhail Arivairami Paramatman, that Ramana, who is the Paravak as I, the ego will be able to feel, will be able to listen to that Paravak only when it is not outward going towards other sounds, other thoughts, other sensory attractions. In that quiet, pure I, Ramana's continuous speech, the Mauna Vyakya, this speech is unreal, it is temporary. Whereas Bhagavan's speech from within the ego is the real speech. Mauna Vyakya Prakatita Parabrahma Tattvam. And that Parabrahma Tattvam, Bhagavan is not revealing sometimes and stopping to reveal sometimes. Bhagavan is constantly giving that speech. But it is very, very subtle, very, very mrudu, even softer than the softest sounds you can listen. But then, when the ego has removed all the proclivities, its ear becomes pure and it is able to feel the aham, 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 the deathless spirit, which Bhagavan calls as the Shruti note. He identifies with that I am the deathless spirit, I am the Paravak. Bhagavan identifies in his enlightenment experience. Bhagavan is saying here, you listen to that. In sadhana, you listen to the Paravak of Spurana, the Akhanda Akara Vritti, the Aham Spurana, the Kundalini Shakti, the Paravak. That is the sweetest Madhuram Krishna Namam, Madhuram Ramana Namam, Madhuram Ramanamam. Why do they say that? The Bhaktas, when they keep chanting Ramana Namam, then that Ramana Namam becomes Akhanda Akara Ramana Namam. Only Ramana Namam is going on. And effortlessly, the I is feeling the Akhanda Akara Ramana Namam going inside. That is why it is called as Madhuram. It is the sweetest to listen to the Akhanda Akara Vritti. And in Atma Vicharam, we call it as Aham Spurana, the I, which doesn't even have the denominations as the Nama and Rupa, which doesn't even have saying that I belong to this particular Hinduism or this denomination of belief. It is the I. It is the place where all the religions, all the gods meet the Satyam, meet the purity. So that in Aham, it is the ocean in which all the rivers of all the religions come and pour. And listen to the throb of that ocean and be identified with it. You are not apart from it. That Akhandakara Amrita Vritti alone is there. Therefore, you or anybody else can't be apart from it, do not exist. When you don't even have Astitva, how you will have doership or knowership? Therefore, one identifies with the Akhandakara Atmaspurana by listening. By first listening, it will enrapture us and completely consume us. Unadal Khan. Whatever we possess, whatever we can potentially possess, which is the entire cosmos, we and the entire cosmos are offered as food to that Madhuram, to that Akhandakara Vritti, to that Mauna Vyakhyanam, which is going on all the time. And one is identified irrevocably with that Spuranam, the deathless spirit, the Kundalini Shakti, the Akhandakara Vritti, the Aham Spuranam. And that is where the sadhana of who am I takes us by obliterating one vasana after another. One has to steadily, deliberately eliminate one vasana after another by letting go of thought and holding who am I. For the next 15 minutes, let us practice Atma Ucharam. Can set the time for us. Namo Ramana.
Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. May I request Venkatesh Deshpande ji to give us the summing up remarks. Namo Ramana sir.
Namo Ramana. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jnanamulam Gurur Murti, Pujamulam Gurur Padam, Mantramulam Gurur Vakyam, Mokshamulam Gurur Kripaha, Mokshamulam Gurur Kripaha. Namo Ramana. Happiness. See, finally, we're all, Bhagavan likes says, who am I? Wow. Finally, what we are trying to be is to be happy. And that's a natural state. But we are doing self-enquiry. Funnily enough, we are to find out happiness. We are doing, whatever we are doing also self-enquiry to find out this natural state that we are always in. Imagine you go to your neighbor, when you do self-inquiry, what you say, oh, I say, who am I? Imagine if you go to your neighbor, you say, I do not know who am I. Let me go and ask my neighbor. So you go to your neighbor and ask, sir, can you tell me who am I? He will say, what? You don't know who you are. No, I do not know. Sorry. So you don't know who you are. So no, you are who you are. So you are who you are. Oh, I do not know. So what do people see? If I say, who am I? If I ask anybody, who am I? What they'll say? Oh, you are either a name, you are your form, or how intelligent or dumb you are, or you're a human being. Does anybody see you as conscious being, as a conscious being? Nobody sees you as a conscious being. Hey, they'll say, oh, you're a fool. You do not know who you are. But when we do self-inquiry, what happens? We dip into this happiness. We dip into this great joy and we come out. Whenever we say, who am I? Then what happens? We go into that silence and we come out. It's like, I'm a foodie. It's like having a samosa. When you dip it in sauce, and then you have a bite of that samosa. It is fantastic. And then what happens? Every time you have a bite of the samosa, you want to have a dip into the sauce. But then what happens? After some time, the samosa gets over. There's no more samosa, but there's plenty of sauce. Nobody has tasted the sauce alone. If you really ask somebody, have you tasted the sauce alone? No. You are attached to the samosa. If you have the samosa, then only you will dip into the sauce. But imagine if you had only the sauce. Imagine if you had experienced the happiness, your natural state, the way it is. Then do you need the samosa? You don't. Like, why do people go on a holiday? What's a holiday? It's a holy day. H-O-L-I, holy. Means day. Why is it called a holiday? Because what happens, you listen to the transcendental speech. When you go to a beach, there's nobody talking to you. You can listen to the birds. You can listen to the river, to the ocean, and you can feel the silence. It's so deafening. You know the silence. If you go to a beach, close your eyes, and there's nobody else in the beach. It's deafening. It's so deafening. It is really frightening at that point of time, because that's when you are with the transcendental speech. That stillness which you experience within is that speech that what Bhagavan is talking about. When we are in that speech, what happens? We get rejuvenated and we come back to this world, to this day-to-day activities with all these noise, all these prattles here, there, everywhere, and then want to go back to that transcendental speech, go back to that silence. That's what's called a holy day, because you are with that Atman. So important thing we have to understand, everything, the God, when he made all of us, one thing he did, he kept himself within, and he kept the ocean of happiness also within. And he says, come in, it's here. Don't go out. But then what happens was we don't seem to understand his language. And we keep looking here, there, outside for the samosas. And finally we realize the source is within. That existence, consciousness, bliss is actually within. Once you get a taste of it, you'll only be with the source, the saucy consciousness, and you will never leave it. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana, sir. May I request Vaibhavji and Pratnama to lead us in the chanting of Ashtotram? Namo Ramana.
नमो रमण भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवदं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि ॐ महासेन मोहंसेन जाताय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः ॐ गुरवे नमः ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः ॐ महौजसे नमः ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोत्थिताय नमः ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः ॐ श्रीमद्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः ॐ परमार्थविधे नमः ॐ तीव्राय नमः ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोर्णशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः ॐ तपोमयाय नमः ॐ उदासीनाय नमः ॐ महायोगिने नमः ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः ॐ फुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः ॐ जूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजदचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशोणाचलरिद्बोधस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ ऋच्चान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणाद्रिशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थानोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रह सुप्रवाह विवश सादात्म्य भावङ्गतः निर्निष्ठस्वगभीर नित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनासेकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तर ज्योतिषे। ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
Namo Ramana Pratnama. Namo Ramana to you. Namo Ramana Venkatesh ji, Namo Ramana Ujjwal ji, Namo Ramana to all.